All right. Well, welcome everybody. Glad to see your faces. It's always nice when you put your camera on. So thank you for that, Bruce and Jim. I know the rest of you guys are just maybe not technically savvy or something. Anyways, I've got mine on. So tonight's subject is, and if you remember Rod from last week, he didn't want empathy. What's interesting, Rod, is when you rescheduled, I used to have empathy as the teacher of the night, and then you gave it to yourself. But I've got something equally as hard because it's kind of along those lines of talking about yourself or selling yourself to the group. The topic is you are the expert until you hire one. So in other words, it's like, why do you need a coach, right? And I love this topic, not because I'm a coach, but because I've received so much value from being coached. And I think oftentimes we need to understand that value and why we're here. And by the way, I'm going to give you a big dose of accountability tonight because you're here for a reason, and hopefully that'll bring some value to you. First and foremost, we've got a lot of exciting things coming up with the Young Entrepreneurs Syndicate in terms of bringing additional value. And I'm not going to let the cat out of the bag. You'd have to be paying attention to our social media to see some of those things, or maybe the things that were insinuated. But I'll tell you what, this group's only going to get better in terms of resources. We're making some investments that I think will be worthy and great tools for everyone. We did launch, this is forward facing on our website. Thanks to Rachel and her son, Kevin, and my daughter, Darylyn, we launched something we call 35 Tough. And what that is it's a version of 75 Hard for kids. And it stemmed from, and I think the same is for Rachel, when both of us were on 75 Hard, our kids wanted to do it, but it's just not realistic to put those kids through that type of schedule at that age, a full gallon of water, 2 45-minute workouts, outside, inside. So what we did is we came up with, let's do something for kids. So it's 35 days and it's very simple, but I would encourage you to look at our website. If you look under the tabs, you'll find 35 Tough on there, and it has all the rules of engagement and or my social media, Rachel's social media, Rod's social media. I saw him repost it. And my daughter and Rachel's 2 kids are already on it. Day 3 today. So anyways, been a good time adding some value to the kids. We also changed our tagline on our website. And this is for the people on the call. You know, what I realized in discussions with Rod and Rachel is that we've put some really overarching statements in our materials. And what that is to assume is that you understand what that means. You know, when we say we're business leaders and we're able to bring some value to you, what does that mean exactly in your own world? And unless you're asking the questions, it's really hard for us to answer that. So we try to define it a little bit, and you'll see us to continue to define this. But right now it says, make more money, beat the layoffs, and be an entrepreneur, right? Now, I don't know if anybody's actually made more money in this group yet. I know I have in the last year, and I've started a couple new businesses since this last year, and I've seen the revenue from that, paying attention to some of the things that we're teaching here and the things that I know. But I hope you have as well, if that's what you're looking for. Beat the layoffs. If you're an entrepreneur working for somebody, I hope that the soft skills that we're teaching you have become essential in your daily, and you're learning from that and you're adding value to where you work. And then finally, being an entrepreneur, you know, for sure, Taylor, Samantha, Bruce with his podcast have all launched something this year. Fred's not here tonight, but Fred is launching a new business. So I know we're breeding entrepreneurs here, right? The point of all this is, if there's something you're looking to get specifically out of this group, chances are we've either covered it or know how to help in that arena. Don't be afraid to ask. And that's what the latter half of these calls are for. The first half is that education segment, but the second half is for you to ask questions so that we can bring value to you. Somebody on the call today, I had a discussion with earlier today about a business opportunity, or it wasn't necessarily an opportunity. They had to make a decision if they were going to take on an executive role within a company. And they didn't quite understand what that looked like in a typical format, right? So I explained that. Now, oftentimes taking on an executive role is a great thing. It means more money or more autonomy, more control over that business, especially a startup business or something smaller. As an executive, you could be on the board, you've got voting power, and you can lead the direction of the company. However, if that's not where you're at in life, you might just say, look, I want to stand back and not worry about those things. You know, what was great about this conversation, though, is this person hadn't had exposure to those types of discussions, whereas I've lived that for a lot of years and was able to bring that type of value. So I don't know what you need until you ask. Reserve the last 30 minutes for you to ask. Please bring those questions. That's why I sent it in the text today. Ask some questions. Okay, here's a quote from Tom Landry. A coach is someone who tells you what you don't want to hear, who has you see what you don't want to see, so you can be who you always knew you could be. And I love the coaches of these professional sports teams. You know, they have the ability to bring out the best in people, right? And it seems so natural to have a coach in sports. And why is that so natural in only sports and not business? Why do we think that we know it all when it comes to business? I've been there. I've started several businesses well before my hiring coaches days. I thought I knew it all. I thought I worked, you know, for these big companies and knew everything there was to know. And as you've heard me say, I paid the dummy tax so you don't have to. I learned that from Dave Meltzer because he paid a whole bunch of dummy tax, you know, and so the story goes, right? So there's a tremendous amount of value in having a coach. I wish I had a coach when I started my tequila company. I wish they would have explained to me how to preserve capital, especially hard capital raised for equity stakes in my company. I might have been living a different life, right? I might not have made so many mistakes. I might have had more money to work with later on in the years of running that company. So there's a tremendous amount of value of getting that coaching and applying what you learn, whether that's here or somewhere else. So here's what I did. I built out, and by the way, I'm going to be very transparent on this. I looked up online because I wanted it to be generic terms. Why hire a coach or an expert? And then what I did is I went back to all of our past classes we've done on here and compared what they said to what we've already taught. And it's interesting because all the ideas that I got off their top 10 are things that we've already taught on. And I'm not telling you that to get credit for being these great coaches. What I'm telling you for is that some of these things are very common, but they're often overlooked. They're not asked about. I just admitted that I didn't ask those things when I started my own business and we had $5 million to work with. I probably could have hired a dozen coaches at the time. So here's some of the reasons why you would hire a coach. Number one, accountability. By the way, there's not going to be any acronym here. This does not spell anything. Don't even try, Rod. Number one, accountability. Oftentimes when I'm working one-on-one with somebody, just like you would when you have a trainer at the gym, right? I just tell them up front, look, I might not, you know, bring the pixie dust down and change your life, but I will hold you accountable. I will hold you accountable. And that's a really important component to a coach. If they can't hold you accountable, then you got the wrong coach. We're here every single Monday night. We're ready and available for you. We're checking in. We're making sure that you have the tools that you need, right? On 7/11 in 2022, we talked about accountability. You can go back to that video and watch it. Number two, coaches help you attain your goals, right? You work through the process together. These are what my goals are. And I want to use a moment here to remind you that you should have your goals written down. Now, I look back on our notes for the last 12 months, and there's several topics that covered goals, but not a specific entire night committed to the goals. So we did talk about values, and we talk about values a lot. I share my values often. And by now, since most of our members have been here for more than a couple months, my hope and desire is that you've written down your values and you've built your life around those values. If you haven't, I would highly suggest you start considering that, because your values are what you represent, what you stand for, where you want to be, what's important to you in your life. From those values, here's the reminder: build your goals around those values. That way, When your values sync up with your goals, what you achieve beyond that should be right on target with what you really want in life. I've talked about often, whether it's on my podcast or on these calls, how important my daughters and my wife is to me and my family life. That trumps everything outside my relationship with God. And the point of that is, when I look at my goals, if they don't align with those two things, we're not doing them. Right? Very seldom will I pick anything that takes me out of that spectrum, those two most important values that I have. So when you look at your values and your goals, make sure they align. Don't do things that are out of sync with those values, whatever those values might be. Okay. We will do some more classes on goals and looking towards helping you obtain those goals. And by the way, that's a great opportunity when you reach out to us individually. Let's talk about your goals. How can we help you achieve those? How can we get you closer, right? There's a link on our website where you can book private time with us as often as you like. All right. Another reason to hire a coach, organization. You know, we've taught about every day writing down your 5 things that you're grateful for, talking about the white space on your calendar and how to fill that up, talking about how to build a business plan, the tools that are on the back end of Young Entrepreneur Syndicate. A good coach will help keep you organized and help you keep you focused on where you're going. They'll reel you back in from all the shiny objects that you're going to encounter on a daily basis. And speaking of business plan, it's on the back end of Y.E.S, right? Oh, I didn't mention on 2/6/22, February 6, 22, we had an organization topic. Business plan is on the back end of Y.E.S. There's documents there along with several others. If you need to write a business plan, I know Fred called me about that a couple of weeks ago. He's writing a business plan, asked me where it was at, back end of Y.E.S, under documents. All right, there's several other stuff on there. Marketing ideas. Normally I'd say the best marketing person on here, but I noticed I've got another marketing person on here that's rising to fame, Samantha. So I've got Samantha and Rachel on here. Okay, so one, you've got a leader of this group for marketing, and she's done some class on that, and she will do more. And 2, you've got a member, Samantha, that you can reach out to through the directory that you can connect with and talk about what she's doing, right? And what's interesting, self-admittedly, I've been in marketing almost the last 30 years. And I sit at the dinner table sometimes when Samantha's there working on her computer and she's doing marketing stuff. I'm like, what are you doing? And she starts rifling through her phone and what she's doing in social media, stuff I've never even seen before. And what I've realized is that she's eclipsing what I'm able to do because she's fresh in the world of marketing, learning all the new stuff, right? So you have some incredible tools available to you, not only in this group, but that's another reason why you would want to have a coach or an expert. Unbiased insights. Now, I would assume that you can get that from anybody in this group, but also a coach should be able to give you some unbiased insights as to what you're trying to do. I've talked to a number of people in this group and outside of this group about ideas, and it just was not a good idea. And I just said, you know what? Are you really sure that's what you want to be doing? Right? This is my opinion, but this is what I see from my perspective, right? If you're going to hire an expert or a coach, you should look for those unbiased insights and hold them accountable for that. Don't let them blow smoke. All right. An expert coach would also help build self-confidence. Through their teachings and the skill set that they're giving you, you're going to get some self-confidence out of that. They're going to reaffirm what you're already doing. They're going to reaffirm your business plan, or they're going to correct that business plan and then give you the self-confidence to move forward in whatever it is you're looking to move forward on. So the importance of having an expert, especially in this area, so that you understand that you're in the right direction. Nothing worse than going down a road for a few miles and you realize you're on the wrong road, or climbing that ladder and you got to the top and you're on the wrong building. Old Stephen Covey quote there. Self-confidence, get an expert, get a coach, build that self-confidence. By the way, we talked about self-confidence on June 27th, if you want to go back and look at that one. Fresh perspective, same, right? Get a fresh perspective on your idea. I kind of touched on that. We talked about that on December 5th, 22. Growth. A coach or an expert will be able to enhance your growth through their experience. Put the problem in front of them and allow them to speak on the growth opportunities that they see, and then put that decision back in your court and decide what direction you're going to go, right? Growth might be as simple as pointing you in a straight line instead of the zigzag that you were planning on doing. And oftentimes an expert in the industry will be able to do that. They've been there. They've seen what the finish looks like, and they've made those twists and turns. And that's going to help you from having to do all that stuff, right? So an expert will help with your growth. Balance. One of my first clients, life coaching clients, his balance was way out of whack. His family life was suffering. Now I was there to help his work life. And eventually I just said, look, man, I'm not a marriage coach. That's not what I do. I think you're good at work, but I think you better go back home and focus on what's happening over there, right? A coach or an expert will be able to help you with your balance, help you achieve your success within a set of parameters, right? And get you on that track for balance, whatever that balance looks like. Maybe it's just a balance within your own business or your organization or your team. An expert should be able to help you with the balance. And then final reason why to hire an expert. Learn to be helpful. They should be teaching you to be helpful. It's a great topic this week. I actually stole this one from my pastor last weekend. He talked about being helpful in the team, and a good coach or an expert in business should help teach you how to be more helpful as a team, should also teach your team how to be helpful. I was thinking about this because of the Super Bowl that just happened. Now, I didn't watch the game. I'm not a big fan of watching sports on TV. But when you think about help in perspective as a team, right? If a lineman lets a linebacker come through the offensive line heading towards the quarterback, the rest of the team's not just going to stand back and let him go through because it's not their job. Everybody's going to jump in to help, to make sure that quarterback doesn't get tackled. And it's a coach that teaches them how to look out for problems, how to help one another, help to keep that quarterback protected. In your own business, that could look like a number of things. That could look like your bottom line. It could look like your customer service, your quality control, your products, whatever that looks like. Being helpful and being taught to be helpful as a soft essential skill is critically important. So add that to the list of reasons why you should have an expert or a coach, is to help you learn how to be more helpful in everything you do, even if it's top down or if it's bottom up, whatever that looks like. All right. Just some other thoughts on this is that we have a library of books that we recommend on Y.E.S, and you can find that on the forward-facing side of the website. And I just want to walk through a few of the books. What we're teaching and talking about here comes from multiple years of experience from each one of us. And there's a tremendous amount of immediate value in that through these meetings or through our correspondence. But there's also a lot of backup that you can get from, materials that are out there in the form of books. Now, because I'm on 75 hard right now, I'm burning through books like they're going out of style. They say read 10 pages, I'm reading 100. It's because I'm enjoying it and soaking up everything I can, because I'm looking at these books as an expert speaking to me as a coach, right? So here's a few that I really like a lot, and these are on the website. Alan Stein, Raise Your Game. And what I like about Alan's book, and I met Alan, he was on my podcast. He's a performance coach for the NBA. And I've already mentioned, I have zero interest in basketball. I don't watch it. It's never, ever been a sport that I related to. But I've read his book 3 times because the skills that he teaches his players are the same skills that we can learn in business, right? The consistencies, the challenges, the struggles, the hard times. And I want to take a real quick left turn here because I said hard times. As you know, I'm a big fan of Andy Frisella's podcast. He talked about this last week about hard times and about how business coaches or gurus or influencers or whatever that looks like to you on social media, they don't talk enough about the hard times. Well, I know I've said that in this course before, earlier in the year or late last year. Business is hard. Life is hard. Relationships are hard. All these things are hard. We're not promising it to be easy. And this coaching experience isn't going to make it any easier. if anything, it's probably going to make it harder, because all of a sudden you're going to become more accountable to yourself and those around you for the knowledge that you've learned to be a better entrepreneur or a better intrapreneur. So the reality is your life's going to get harder the longer you're here. But I don't know if you've ever said this. I know I have a whole bunch of times, Samantha and I, after a long day of working out in the pasture, you know, fixing fences in the garden and digging holes and planting stuff. And, you know, you finish the day, you've been sweaty, hot, you get to the back patio. It's like, man, nothing like a cold beer after a long, hard day of working, right? There's a tremendous amount of satisfaction in putting in a hard day's work. And that doesn't matter if it's in your yard, you know, building the garden or fixing fences or working with the animals. For me, it also applies when you're on the job, when you're running your business, that putting in a hard day's work is incredibly satisfying. We're built to put in hard work. And I don't want to confuse, you know, what's out there in the world with it being plush and easy just because you're an entrepreneur. Just because you see success in somebody doesn't mean they're not earning it. You know, my brother is probably the closest person to me that has had tremendous amounts of success, worth millions of dollars. And I can't tell you a day that he didn't work his ass off. Matter of fact, he retired 2 years ago, and I saw his sister-in-law, who owns In-N-Out, posted a picture with him at a work day, new building opening. And I snapshotted it and I sent it to him. I said, "Looks like you're still working, bro." He says, "Yeah, still showing up," right? I don't care what somebody's showing, forward-facing photos or success. It all requires hard work. And, you know, sometimes you look at them going, "Well, why are you working so hard? Because you have all this stuff." Well, they have all that stuff because they're willing to keep working hard. You know, and so I just wanted to remind everybody that it doesn't get easier. If anything, with more knowledge, more experience, more skill, more raising your own bar to be the best you can be, it's only going to get harder, but you're going to appreciate it a hell of a lot more. And I'll tell you, on my second round of 75 hard in the last, you know, 130 days now, I'm so grateful for the work that I put in and how I feel, how I show up every day because of the work that I put in. I wouldn't trade it for anything. And yeah, I've missed a couple celebratory moments with some whiskey, with some friends and different things like that. But you know what? We'll catch up when I'm done, and there'll be a moment for that. So don't get caught in the trap of thinking it's not going to be hard, because it will, which actually leads me into my next book. This is by Jocko, and I just finished it. It's called Extreme Ownership. And the book is written from the battlefield. He was one of the first Navy SEALs that was over in Fallujah. And what I love about this book, you know, if you like that warrior mentality, what I love about the book is every chapter starts with a military scenario and some form of craziness that they're going into in the battle. And then it jumps right into some of his CEO training back here in the States, you know, 10 years later, and how they apply the same skill set as in the SEALs, right? But it talks about our ownership as leaders and our obligation as leaders. Also, it talks about learning from the people above and the people below. Just like what we're talking about today is why hire an expert, right? Because we can always learn. The other thing that was cool in his book is he talks a lot about different branches of the military working together on an operation to achieve success, and his approach, right? So really identifying what it is that we're trying to accomplish. And I don't care if I got to work with this other branch of the military, apply that to your own life, by the way. How do we get the job done, right? Great example he gives is that there was a manufacturing company that was always waiting on a supply company to finish their job before they can get the materials. Well, once they got the materials, they can finish their job and then sell it on to the customer, right? So you can easily see the importance of that manufacturing and that supply company working together, but nobody ever connected them. They have no connectivity, right? But when they took the time to get to know each other better, off scenario, right? Hey, let's go grab a cup of coffee. Here's what our struggle is. We're always waiting on you. Let me understand your problems. How can we help you with your problems so that we can be more efficient? All of a sudden, two outside forces working together to serve a customer, they become more successful, right? So that's Jocko's book, Extreme Ownership. Great opportunity to learn something. Next book, Jim Collins, Good to Great. I've been touting this one for, I don't know, last 20 years. My brother gave that to me when I was at In-N-Out. The incredible principles if you're a manager in a company working for somebody else. Okay. It really applies in that scenario. If you're an entrepreneur, it's still a great book. But really, when you read this one, it talks a lot about your leadership within a bigger organization. I'm kind of thinking about Jim's past life, my past life at Kettle One, working with a whole bunch of people. Jim Collins, Good to Great. David Meltzer, Game Time Decision Making. David Meltzer comes from a sports background, wonderful book. What I like about David is he's very holistic. He's the one that taught me about, the gratitude and how to apply that, right? This is another great teacher out there available that you can read the book and get something out of it. Tim Grover, another basketball coach, read that book a couple months ago. Great format for learning how to apply those principles into your business and in your entrepreneurship. Tony Robbins, Unshakable. I went through a Tony Robbins seminar, both Samantha and I did a couple weeks ago. It's 5 days long. It was online. We paid for like this VIP thing so we could have a better Zoom connection with it. And what was cool about it is Tony Robbins basically was just giving this out to millions of people, right? And it was 2 hours a day minimum. Some days were almost 3. And what I realized is that Tony's been teaching this for 30 plus years. The same principles have applied for the last 30 plus years. But what it comes down to, all the way back to the first thing I said about hiring an expert, accountability. Accountability. Although Tony's given away this free course for 5 days, 2 hours a day to millions of people, the component that most people need out of that, and he mentioned it many times and gave the opportunity, is accountability. We can tell you these things all day long, but holding you accountable so that you actually go out and do it, just like a coach would, just like my trainer did for my Spartan racing. It's so important to have that component, right? So either you learn how to be accountable to yourself here or on your own, or you have an expert help you with that. And then last but not least, Rod's probably more familiar with this. Rod, when we recap, you want to talk about it, Grant Cardone and his 10X. And, I love Grant's approach and how he looks at things. And I have a real estate investment with him. And, I've got different investments out there, but he was so straightforward on this investment. He's like, here's what it is. Here's what we're trying to do. It's new, it's cutting edge, it's real estate, but here's what you're going to get out of it. And lo and behold, man, that guy sends a check every quarter. First one came, I was completely shocked. I never thought I'd see a check, right? I thought, this would be another one of those investments, 20 years down the road, it might be worth something. Nope, sends a dividend every quarter. So I love what Grant's doing, not just because he's sending me a check, but, he holds true to his word. He's consistent. He's been doing it for a long time, and he's reached millions of people. And actually, I haven't heard one person complain about his 10X classes. All right, so to start to summarize some of this, what's your next step? Now you're here. I'm grateful for that. Rachel, Rod, we're all grateful for this group. And I look forward to this group growing. I hope that you share this group if we're bringing any value. I'd like to have more members really from the perspective of more teachable moments so that we can all learn from other people's question and answers and things that they're doing so that our directory will grow. But we're not hard selling this on anybody at any time because we like what we're doing and we want to keep bringing more value instead of going out there trying to get more members. As I've said before, I want participants, and I appreciate how everybody participates in here. So activate what you're learning. Second, do the work. That goes back to the hard part, right? We've got to do the hard work. And by doing the work, you'll get there. I'm going to give Bruce a shout out here because I know he's doing the work on his podcast. Trust me, I've been doing it for years. It's a lot of work to put one together. A lot of thought goes into that. Research goes into it, formulating it. Not to mention when you get it out, it's like, well, is anybody going to listen to this? And is it any good? Right? So there's all the different components of even what might appear to be fairly simple the emotional stress or the emotional component, however you approach it, and all the work. But eventually, Bruce, by the way, you're going to be looking back going, wow, I've got 70,000 downloads and over 300 shows. I got a hell of a body of work here, right? I brought a lot of value to the marketplace. So don't be afraid to do the work. Here's something that we don't do often unless we're asked. We love doing it, meaning the other leaders here, and that's teaching other people. And what I love about teaching other people is that information becomes sticky. If you have knowledge and you want your team to be great, take the time to teach them, and it not only becomes sticky for them, but it becomes sticky for you, right? And then all of a sudden it builds some consistency in your behaviors because now you're teaching the things that are important to you. And that's what they call the stickiness in business. Best way to do it is teach it. You'll remember it, you'll be doing it, and you'll be consistent with it. Not to mention somebody else will be bringing some value to them. Build a strong foundation. Again, in my research, as I suggested earlier, the top 10 reasons why you would hire an expert or a coach. Well, we've taught those things, but when I look back on all the classes we've talked about in the last 12, 14 months, we have one hell of a foundation here. When I look at my own business, I love that foundation. I know that this is going to be around for a long time. And I'm encouraging you to look back at what you're doing and how you're doing it and test the strength of your foundation, right? Make sure it's a cement block, not that clay stuff, that Adobe stuff they use out there in California, down there in San Juan, right, Rachel? Actually, that stuff lasts a long time. But make sure that you're using the right materials to build a strong foundation. All right. Put in the time. Being an entrepreneur or a successful entrepreneur does not happen between 9 and 5. It happens whenever it happens, right? I'll attest to most of the people in this group. I've seen you involved and communicative at a variety of times during the day. And I'm happiest to get those types of emails or texts because I know you're stretching yourself to do a little bit more, to give that one more, Ed Milet talks about. You're going to give it one more, get that Sunday night text or that Saturday morning. Hey, I'm grinding away this morning before I go out for whatever, right? With the family. I love that. But don't be afraid to put in the time. That's what it's going to take if you want to be successful. The other most important factor of what it's going to take is being patient. It takes time to build a body of work, takes time to build that foundation. And it takes time with an expert or a coach to do that as well. The foundation that I built with David Meltzer, by the way, Dave's a 5-figure a month coach, not an easy nut to swallow when you're writing those checks, but I worked with Dave for 12 months and the foundation that he gave me in those 12 months, and I was consistent. I stuck with it. The foundation that he gave me in those 12 months set me on the right course to be living the exact goals and dreams that I had at the time that I'm living today. But I had to be patient with it. It took time, energy, money, right? Patience. And I'll tell you, along all those things, a lot of times you don't want to do that stuff. You don't want to jump on another call, right? It's work. There's other things to do. I know my dinner's sitting downstairs, probably. No pressure, Sam. But we got to do the things that we need to do to be successful, right? So be patient, put in the time. And the final thought on that is put in the long game. Put in the long game. I know it's a cliche, but they say it's a marathon, not a sprint. But that's really what this is about. And what's interesting about that notion, and I think I said this a few weeks ago, retirement is kind of bullshit, right? It's something that somebody said years ago that we all should aspire to do is retire. Well, the reality is we have our health for good reason. As long as you can go out and bring value in one form or another, retirement isn't what it used to be to our parents or grandparents, depending on your age, right? There's so much more to life and there's so much value in giving back to others. I'm not saying you have to keep working for money, but maybe you're working to bring value to others because your values have shifted, right? I can assume that Bruce is on a retirement from being law enforcement, but he's bringing some value with his podcast. He's teaching people stuff. He hasn't stopped working. My grandfather worked till he was 93. Now he worked in the yard, brought value to the people that drove by, I guess, to his house. But I've spoken before. My client, Paul, we just stopped working together in January, 96 years old, works every day of his life, bringing value to others. Now, Paul would argue, I'm not doing much. But what I told Paul, and I think I've said this here, what Paul was doing was he was encouraging others to do something. He showed up every day, and people are encouraged to do the same. And by the way, I'm bragging on Paul here. I'm encouraged, and hopefully his fortitude is encouraging you to think, wow, Jim's got a client that's 96 years old. He's still working every day. I'm only 65. Why can't I go do something, right? Or whatever your age is. You can always do more. So play the long game. You'll be satisfied. You'll enjoy it, and you'll bring a lot of value if that's the game you're playing. So that's why you hire an expert, or in our case, hire a coach. There's a lot of value there. Rod, thanks for the topic. I'm going to turn it over to you for your thoughts. Okay. Can't wait till next week.
Sorry about that.
Yep.
So Rachel's on next week, so that has me excited. Woohoo!
Excellent.
Yes. So, well, you kind of put me on the spot, and I do want to touch on this because I was a follower of Grant Cardone. Anybody here, raise your hand or put it in the chat. Take any Grant Cardone trainings or read his books. I actually was on his subscribed training program, specialized training program, for about 5 years before he really hit it big time. And I stuck with it, and I liked it, and I liked it for two reasons. Because he was real. He wasn't giving you the cliche crap, right? And that spoke to me. He spoke to me personally that way. He's high energy. I like that. But he wasn't afraid to break the set. Everyone's telling you to do something this way. And I never liked that. I'm one of those, I like forging my own path, right? Sometimes it creates problems and troubles, but I prefer a little chaos to keep me motivated. And he wasn't afraid to do that. So following Grant really gave me permission to follow what I knew in my heart I wanted to do anyway, and that was just forge a different path, do it differently, do everything differently. And the second thing is think big. Those two things, forge your own path, break the mold and think big. And that's what he does. And that's ingrained in me because it was already a part of me. But sometimes we need someone to speak our truth back to us. Mm-hmm. And that's what a coach can also do. They can reaffirm our own truths. And when you've got the world telling you other stuff, and your friends and your family and coworkers telling you other stuff, sometimes you need someone who can reaffirm that truth. I wanted to mention this, Jim, 3 things that a coach is not. I wrote these down. These came to me while you were speaking. A coach is not a crutch.
Yep.
A coach, and you alluded to this, but a coach is not a therapist. Hire an expert for that, right? And most importantly, a coach is not a scapegoat. Okay. Yeah. So those are the 3 things a coach is not. And that goes for just about everything. So the last thing I want to touch on real quick is boards. You're talking about organizational structure and that sort of thing. And then I want to tell a personal story real quick. Boards are important because they help steer a ship, right? But you have to have a captain. There has to be a leader with a vision, or that board can just, founder an indecision. And I serve, right now on a government board, which is different than a corporate board, because they're always following money, which means they're always looking to grow, even if they maybe shouldn't. Right? But there's a grant, right? There's a grant that can pay for this. We need to go after this. And there's this chase after growth for growth's sake because someone else is footing the bill. And you can learn a lot about not how to do things in business by watching government boards function, right? So it's bootstrap. You mentioned it last week, Jim. Bootstrapping, so important. Fund yourself as long as you can to have that control. And we've lost that in our government. It's not about bootstrap. It's about how can we access. and access that free money. It changes the mindset, it changes the mentality. And so sitting on those boards, especially as an entrepreneur, I sit on the budget and finance committee for the county here, and not for the whole county, but for the health board of the county. And believe me, that's enough millions of dollars to make your head spin. But I approach it from a different mindset than government people because I am an entrepreneur. So again, it's that giving back. How can you use your talents and what you've learned in the business world to give back and to make things better? And one thing I'll tell you about government boards is you got to play the long game. There's no short game with, like you can in corporate structure. And I'll end with this story because this is a reminder for everyone. I worked for the largest corporation here in Flathead County for several years as a supervisor. And they function with different rules. They function under whatever the current Harvard MBA models tell you, how you should run your organizations. And part of that, they did annual 6-month reviews and annual reviews for employees. And they had these strict guidelines that somebody in an Ivy League school thought of, right? Well, you tell them what they're doing right, but you cap them out. You can never tell someone they're doing a perfect job because that's unattainable, right? Mm-hmm. You have to tell them they have to improve on something. So manufacture something if you must, but tell them they have to improve something. And I was talking to a friend last week, and his wife just quit her job at a major corporation here, a multi-state national corporation, actually, financial institution. And she was really, really good at her job. And she is an entrepreneur, has another business on the side, but she's working in customer service, absolutely loved it, loved what she was doing. Everybody, loved her. Her clients loved her, the customers loved her, et cetera. And she got her annual performance review. And her supervisor, this is mid-management now, right? Mid-management, you're doing a great job, blah, 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 everything's perfect. Here's the one thing she told her she could improve on: her tone with customers. This is someone who has taught customer service outside of that organization. This is somebody who's that sweetheart Southern belle. You can't get her riled up, right? She was so insulted, she gave her notice on the spot. So following other people's rules and guidelines, if you don't have a relationship with your people, and you know what? It can bite you in the ass. You can flush out your best employees by following bad advice. And if you don't have that personal relationship, if you've not invested yourself in your employees, if you've not invested yourself in relationships with your clients, you can lose them at the drop of a hat with one unintended insult. And that's just a reminder for everyone out here. I know that whether we're working for ourselves or we've got an organization underneath us, you have to be mindful of those relationships. And one slight can cost you more than you could ever imagine. And again, that comes from bad advice. So trust your instincts, right? There can be some of that corporate teaching that has never ran a multinational organization, right? They have no idea. They've learned what they learned in school, and that's it. The bean counters, right? So no offense to some of those people who may have a little bit of outside experience, but I think that's the value that Y.E.S brings to our members. So I'm going to leave it at that. Rachel, if you want to weigh in.
Yeah, I want to touch real quick, Rachel. So Rod, good comment. And by the way, just to kind of tie that back into our topic, if that leader that gave that review had some good coaching or expert advice instead of that Harvard MBA, they might have approached it a little bit differently. It's funny because we talk about soft skills in here, and I've used the term a couple of times tonight, with intent, added the word essential, by the way. I've interviewed 4 different business experts in the last 2 weeks for my podcast. The latest being this morning with Michael Peterson. He wrote a book called Dominate Your Market. The only things that Michael wanted to talk about is soft, essential skills that we've been talking about in here. So is business growth, marketing, digital marketing, fitness, by the way, motivation, and mindset having to do with, resets and meditation and things like that. This is what's being taught out there. And, again, we've talked about a lot of these calls are spent on these soft essential skills because they are just that. They're essential to your success. If you want some help with your hard skills, hit us up. And once in a while, we'll touch on those. You want to talk about building out a business plan? We can do that all day long. That's a hard skill. And we've got that on the back end, and I'll walk you through it. But these soft skills people forget about. And that's exactly the point of Rod's story, I'm sure, is that person lost some soft skills and they lost an employee along the way. So, Rachel, give us your opinion. By the way, if you got questions, put your hands up and I'll come back to you when Rachel's done. Unmute.
All right. I was going to unmute there. All right. So I'm going to just touch on two things. First is as a personal share. And it really relates to the top 10 things that Jim said tonight. And Jim, I am going to ask you on behalf of the group, the top 10 list of the reasons to hire a coach. Maybe you could share those in the chat or in a Instagram later or something, because I was writing them down and I was thinking about a task that I've been struggling with personally for almost 2 years now.
Yeah.
And I think Jim knows where I'm going with this. I consider myself quite the expert when it comes to marketing and public relations. And I'll tell you, like, before I tell you what I'm struggling with, I talk with clients all the time and I say, you are the best at what you do. You are the best at making pizza, or you are the best at, running this hotel, or you are the best at making this product, whatever it is, right? Like, they know their business inside and out, but they don't know the marketing part. So when I come in, my job is to let them know what they don't know and ask them questions that get them thinking in the right direction, right?
Mm-hmm.
So if they know their business better than they do, and your marketing, by the way, it's a very intimate process to share with an outside person and say, hey, listen, this is where we're struggling, or this is where we're hurting, or this is where we are need to, more customers, or our balance sheet is this or that, right? Like, you got to really have a lot of trust with somebody. So I come in and I work with people and I ask them, I have a whole sheet of questions. And actually, I should probably make it part of our back end of our tools for Y.E.S, because they're very strategic questions that lead people down this path of figuring out kind of what they didn't know to ask, or what they didn't know they needed. So I will put that on the back end and I'll share it with everybody. So that being said, I got so used to being the expert at what I'm doing that it was hard for me to ask for help. So a couple of years ago, Jim introduced me to somebody who his whole job is helping people write their books. That is what he is the best at. I'm the best at marketing. This guy, nope, 2 minutes. He's the best at helping people write books. Well, I don't know if it's ego or lack of focus or whatever. I didn't want to hire him as a coach or to help me write this book. I'm like, I can figure it out myself. I know this marketing stuff, but it's a different skill set. So after the last 2 years of going through it and outlining it and trying to figure it out, and like really dedicating more hours than I'm willing to admit to it, I finally had my first onboarding call with him this morning. And he is going to do all the things that Jim listed, the holding me accountable to achieve my goals with organization, help me gain that confidence. He's the expert. He gives me a fresh perspective. So this book that I've been wanting to do for 2 years that hasn't seen the light of day, within the next 3 or 4 months, it will be done. I have every confidence. He's done it hundreds of times. I just had to be brave enough to ask. So I loved the top 10 list tonight of when you need an expert, because sometimes the experts need experts, and you forget that you don't have all the skills that you need to get the job done. And for me, writing the book, It's all about being a female entrepreneur. So it's not like I don't know the subject matter. It is my life, but it's, how do I bring it together in a way that is clearly communicated? I needed an expert. I needed a coach. So stay tuned, and I would love to share it with you guys as soon as it's available. So and thank you for putting that in the chat.
Yeah, I emailed it to you too. I think what we'll do is we'll put my topic tonight on the back end, because it does reference some classes specific to those items. And Rachel, thanks for being transparent, by the way. I know this is for everybody. It's hard to admit that you don't know something or you're not good at something. I mean, I did admit that my wife is eclipsing me in her marketing skills, but sometimes we just need help, and that's okay. And it's interesting because we all are quick to offer help, but we're not very quick to ask for help. So be willing to do that. You'll be more successful because of that. Absolutely guaranteed. So, okay. Any questions? I didn't see any hands go up. Happy to answer them. Jim, go for it. Unmute and hit us up.
A couple of things. I'll try to roll through these kind of quick. For you, Fred, I listened to a couple of the podcasts. I've enjoyed the first couple. The only issue I've got, I tried to listen to these at the gym. The audio is quite low. And sometimes with the earpiece in, I crank the volume all the way up, and I still struggle a little bit to hear it clearly. I don't know if that's something.
Even on the most recent ones?
I've gotten through the first two.
Okay, so yeah, we've tried to address it. I don't know if it's perfect or not, but we definitely increased the gain on the recordings, and we've been taking our share of licks. But I'm like, hey, we keep going through there, and I fault myself for always trying to make things perfect. And I keep telling my partner, hey, we go in there, we fix it, and we send it, and we go, and we'll make it better the next time. We do the best we can, but
keep going, Fred. Keep pushing. By the way, while Jim comes up with his next question, put your podcast link in here again in case somebody didn't see that before, or the name of your podcast, please. Go ahead, Jim, with your other one. Then we'll go to
thanks, Jim.
Bruce.
Sure thing. Another one. So I've done some cold emailing, and I had somebody get back with me. They were a fairly senior person in an organization, and surprisingly, took the time to write back a very simple email. Says, I'm not interested. You may remove me from your marketing efforts. And the first reaction I had was, I wonder if I went back to this guy, said, look, I'm not going to bother you again, but would you share with me why you said no? If it was, we already have something, we're not interested, for whatever reason. I talked to a friend of mine this afternoon, and he's like, I wouldn't do that. I think you can literally be held legally responsible for communicating with someone after they've said no, they're not interested. Is anyone familiar with this? Is there some kind of legal issues if you contact people once they've said no?
Well, basically what he's doing, he's opting out, right?
Yes.
And we're obligated when they say I'm opting out to make sure that they've opted out, right? Can he sue you? I don't know. Why would, that would be a lot of money for not a lot, right? But I will say your friend gave you good advice. The answer is no. Okay. Basically what you're asking him to do is your job for you. Okay. You don't know why he doesn't want your service, but it's not up to him to convince you. Okay. You got to go out and do your own homework and figure out what the sweet spot is, unfortunately. So, it drives me nuts when people are asking me all kinds of questions like, hey, I didn't reach out to you. You reached out to me, and I don't have the time. Right. And I'm like the response that you got. I typically am very kind about it because I realize what it takes to reach out to people. And I'm typically like, hey, thank you, but no, thank you. So anyways, I hope that helps. I don't want us to get caught in having somebody else do our work for us when really it falls on our shoulders. Right. Okay. Looks like we lost Bruce. I think he had the question or he was going to say goodbye. I think he was just saying goodbye. So any other questions or comments before we bounce? Rod?
I have one more item unless someone else does.
For it. Hey, sorry. I thought you had two. Go ahead.
No. So a friend of mine reached out to me. He's a local dentist. He said, hey, I think you work in this space. I need help in the marketing area.
Mm-hmm.
And he gave me over the phone a whole list of things, from lead generation to website update to social media to creating content. Like he wants to increase his clientele from kind of like, I'll say, blue collar to high end. He wants to target the people that come in and say, I need a whole mouth of dental work. I'm going to pay cash. Can I come in tomorrow?
Mm-hmm.
I said, absolutely, I can help you. I have people that I can reach out to in this space, but I'm struggling to find the right people. Rachel, or even Samantha, is this something you're interested in? Is this something we could talk about? There needs to be a local aspect of it, because there's got to be, kind of the boots on the ground, someone to go in, talk with them, possibly do some video creation or content creation locally. But I could see a business proposal where some of the stuff is done locally, and maybe some of the social media, the other stuff, is done by a third party.
Let me answer real quick, Jim. I think that what you're asking is absolutely doable. And I'll kind of answer for Rachel and Sam, which, by the way, they've collaborated on some stuff. So you might find the answer within both of them. They can more than likely do something and help out. And I'm glad you said yes to them and you're looking to figure it out. You've got tons of resources here. And I love that you've identified a leader and a member, right? Work with them offline. I'll answer for both of them. I know that they can solve your issues. Okay. And I think it's a great opportunity. And by the way, talk about a business in the making, right? You do this for him. You know how many dentists there are nationally? Get out of town. You're going to figure it out. So
say yes first and figure it out after.
Absolutely. You've got the directory. You know how to get a hold of Rachel. I'll send you a text with both their contacts and figure it out. Good job.
All right. Yeah. Just wanted to bring it up, not discuss it, but just kind of figure out, like, is this the right path to go, and is there interest?
It's the right path. And I appreciate you bringing it up, because here we can bring some value as a group, right? And if anybody else wants to weigh in with Jim, he's on the directory, hit him up and bring that value. So right on. Okay. Fred put the podcast up. So if you haven't seen it, grab it. Great show, Fred. I've enjoyed him. So keep it up. Rod, good to see you. Everybody else, see everybody next week. Rachel, you're on next week. Have a great week. Bye-bye.
All right. Thanks, guys. Good night.
Thank you.
Bye.